All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today for an Ag Science Cafe interview. I'm going to pass the mic off, but I do want to introduce one really special person. We have Monica here today, and Monica is going to be doing the interview.
So I'm one of the 4-H team teachers this year, and I'm here to interview Heather Medina Sauceda, and she's our assistant conservationist for field operations in Southwestern Oregon. And we're here today to interview her about a couple of questions in her field.
Hi, thanks, Monica. Glad to be here.
So the first question I have is, what is the most difficult resource to conserve in the upper and lower Willamette Valley?
That is a loaded question. Thank you for that. It just depends on what type of agriculture you're looking at and what type of farmer, landowner you are. But from my perspective, I've been in Oregon since 2010, and currently we're in a drought. And what I feel, and talking to some other people from NRCS, one of the common resource concerns that we're coming up with is water quantity, the lack of, just due that we are in a drought. Across the state of Oregon, the Natural Resources Conservation Service works with farmers, forestry landowners, all different type of producers, and that right now is the number one concern that we have is drought in Oregon. There's a few other areas that in the Willamette Valley specifically for this question that I would say would be loss of wet prairie. We've lost a lot of wetlands in the Willamette Valley due to homes and agriculture, but wet prairie are very, very rare, and those are some of the areas that have been lost as well. Farmland preservation is another area that is a concern. We call it, for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, we look at soil, water, air, plants, animals, humans, and energy. And for the human factor would be farmland loss. But not only farmland loss, it would be for Black, Indigenous people of color, that would be farm access. There are a lot of BIPOC farmers that are interested in farming, either in urban areas or in rural areas looking to purchase and start farming, but that is a limiting factor as well, farmland access. Another area that we, I would say would be oak habitat loss. And the Natural Resources Conservation Service here in Oregon, especially Western Oregon, is working with many different conservation partners to restore a lot of oak habitat. And oak habitat not only benefits wildlife such as acorn woodpecker and others, but it's a traditional food to many of our Indigenous tribes here in Western Oregon. One of the last items that I would say would be, as we all experienced during COVID, a lot of shortages for food and food access. And for, again, that human factor would be, there's a lot of food deserts in, I would say, not only in the Willamette Valley, but throughout Oregon, where people don't have access to fresh foods. And one of the conservation practices we have is high tunnels, and we work with a lot of producers across the state of Oregon and the Willamette Valley, small farms, and putting in some high tunnels so people can provide some local food to their communities.
For our next question, what was your favorite conservation project throughout your career so far?
My favorite conservation project. Ooh, that was a tough one when I was looking at the questions. I can't say I have a favorite conservation project. I am originally from Michigan. That's where I was born and raised. And when I started working with the Natural Resources Conservation Service in Michigan, I started up in northern Lower Peninsula. One of the projects when I was thinking about this question was, I remember clear as day, me being out in the field in Presque County in Michigan, and looking at and sizing a riparian buffer or windbreak in a field. Probably it was like a hay field, so the grass was really high, and I was measuring and figuring out how long, measuring with a wheel, how long this windbreak would be going on this farm field. That's one of the practices that I thought about. Another practice that I was thinking about is I also worked in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan as a soil conservationist, and I worked with a farmer. She was a tribal member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. She was also, I believe it was a strawberry farmer, and as a soil conservationist, what year was it? Oh, graduated in 1999 from Michigan State, so maybe 2000, 2001. I was working on a conservation plan with her to put in a windbreak for her farm. In northern Michigan, it was very wide open, and I was helping her to provide develop a plan for a windbreak / pollinator habitat so she could have protection for her strawberries. And that was one of the other items that kind of popped into my brain about doing the conservation plans and projects. I really enjoyed working with this lady and able to help her with her farm. And nowadays, people do a lot of the mapping on GIS on the computer system with any of our conservation practices. Back then, when I was a soil conservationist, we drew all the maps by hand. So I would have to color all the maps with color pencils and do all that. So that's a big change from 2021 to the year 2000, the technology the Natural Resources Conservation Service has been using.
Just a question off of that. So which one do you believe is more accurate? Like on the robot was more accurate, or going in person?
I would always go in person, but we always, for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, we always go and visit a farm in person or the land when we meet with a farmer. But then we take that data, the map, and then kind of come back and look at any of our computer systems, so GIS. It's because you have to be out in the field looking at the topography of the land, either rivers or streams, and kind of ground truthing the computer, the GIS system. And most times it's a combination of taking that area from that farm map, being on the ground, and then sometimes with the GIS system, being able to modify those lines just because we know, yeah, the river comes a little bit this way, this is where the riparian buffer should go. So it's a combination of both.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. What is something small we can do to conserve?
What is something small that we can do conserve? The behind me is, in my virtual background, is a cover crop. And cover crops are really important. They provide habitat and access for pollinators. And that would be something that I would say would be something easy that everybody could do at home, either in an urban area or in a condo, an apartment building, would be to plant plants, especially native plants, specific plants that are from Oregon. There's seed or other areas, and providing those native plants for pollinators, such as mason bees, which is a native bee to Oregon, would be extremely helpful because we've lost a lot of our pollinators, and pollinators need native plants. So that would be one thing I would say would be something that people could be doing somewhat easily. And instead of having maybe just a lawn in somebody's yard, students like yourself can talk to your parents and say, hey, instead of having a lawn, why don't we have plants? And even like a garden, planting like a garden to provide those flowers for pollinators. So anything we can do for flowering plants, provide pollinators, would be super helpful. And with that, by having those plants and flowering species, we sometimes reduce our water use, especially by utilizing native plants. Most native plants, the first couple years take a little bit of time to establish, but after that, they're accustomed to Oregon and the climate, that in the long run, helping to reduce the amount of water use by having a lawn or other things would be really helpful in the long run. So I would say planting plants for pollinators, and that in turn helps native plants to reduce water use. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I will note that. It will probably look better than just grass, but. So for our next question, we have, what is the most important task in the process of conservation?
Thank you for that question, Monica. I feel the most important aspect of the process for conservation is talking to people, just like you and I are doing, is talking to people face to face. And not only talking to people, but listening to people. And
Yeah,
listening is, we work with farmers and landowners, forestry landowners, and it's really important to hear. We are a non-regulatory agency. We are out there working with the general public, and that could be anybody. We provide technical assistance and financial assistance, and everybody has a goal and dream for their property. You
yeah,
might say, I want to make a pollinator habitat for my front yard, or I want to grow a oak tree or put in a wetland. Everybody has a goal and dream, and that's really important for us to listen to what our customers are saying, and then we can take what we're hearing and repeat that to the landowners, the farmers, producers, and say, is this what you're saying? And if yes, that's what they're saying, then we can, work on a conservation plan with them to help achieve their goals and objectives for their farm. So listening and then talking with landowners, I think, is the most important.
So what do you believe was a turning point in your career while in your first years of working in this field?
I know when I had written the notes originally, it wasn't necessarily a turning point at the beginning of my career, but I think the turning point that came midway was when I moved from Michigan in 2010 to Oregon. And I moved here with my husband, Juan, who's an engineer. And we left all of our family and friends in Michigan to come out to Oregon. We didn't know anybody, and it was a huge risk and adventure to leave our families, but it was an opportunity for me and my husband for a new job and to learn new things and learn something different than the Midwest of Michigan, something new out in Oregon, that we could achieve some new goals. And that, I think, was a huge risk for us to come out here, and a turning point for me coming out as a new supervisor, managing staff and getting to meet different staff and meeting new partners and customers. I was very comfortable in Michigan and I knew a lot of people. And when I moved out here to Oregon, I had to start all over. I had to learn new plants and trees and get to meet new people. But it has been a great opportunity for growth for me because I've met great people through the 4-H program here in Oregon and through Oregon State and through other farmers and landowners and conservation partners. So it's been a great learning opportunity and has helped me grow immensely. Thank you.
Is there anything that you learned from some of your failures in your years of working?
Ooh, great question. Failures. I am human. I do make errors. I am not perfect. And I tell my staff that a lot that, I am doing the best I can with the information that I do have. I have made some decisions that I probably, looking back now, I would maybe do differently. But I think that's important is that we all take those failures and learn from them and build upon them, and so that next time we can do something better. And that's a part of growth and growing, is that we learn from that and do something different and better. Thank you.
One of my last questions are, did you have any mentors along the way? And if so, how did you find them and how did that relationship help you?
Great question. Mentors. I, I don't really remember having mentors in high school, middle school or high school. I went to Michigan State University and my major was environmental biology. And I had some wonderful advisors at Michigan State. I was in a program called the Residential Initiative for the Study of the Environment, which was for undergraduates freshman year. And we lived in a house, housing on campus. I was also in a program called Drew, which was named after for Charles Drew, which is a medical doctor, African American medical doctor. And those advisors in those two programs helped me immensely. When I am a first generation Chicana, and I forgot to mention my pronouns also, my pronouns are she, her, and ella. But as a first generation Chicana to go to college, university, it was very challenging. And I did rely on my advisors in those two programs heavily. In my college courses at Michigan State, my major was environmental biology, in the College of Nat Sci, zoology. And I did not have a lot of classmates that looked like me. The two programs that I was in were really a huge support system to me and those advisors as well. And they were awesome because they wrote letters of recommendation for me for internships. They supported me in other opportunities, going to conferences across the country. I could talk to them about my dreams and goals. They were there to always support me and say, yeah, you can do it. And that was really helpful. And I never thought about it now, but when you say as a mentor, I think those two, and they were women, those two women were really great mentors for me at Michigan State. And right now, in my position, I'm also the president of Women in NRCS, which is an organization nationally across the country. And I have informally mentored women through that are currently with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And we've also mentored women informally that are currently in college. But I think one of the things that I love to do is working with K through 12 students. And when I would work with Mario Magana and the 4-H students at his camps, to me, that is a informal type of mentoring. And living in Albany, Oregon, I've been able to create relationships with other students that I've seen grow from maybe middle school. I see them at church, I see them in the community, and now they're going to high school or going to college and attending Oregon State. And I have been there to, I would say, informally mentor them and see them grow and just to be there, because for me it's really important that I participate in events like this, because when I was going through middle school, high school, and college, I didn't see anybody that looked like me. And I want you and all the people that are listening to this message, knowing that you all can do my job too and have a great career in ag and natural resources and be whatever you want to be. So thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it was a pleasure just getting to know what you do in your field and how your journey was. It's pretty inspirational. And I hope more people are leaning towards a dream too.
Thank you, Monica.
Yep.